Today I'm here with Bill Holmes, the editorial manager of GPG. Bill, thank you for building the best game in the world.
Oh, well, I was one of several people, a lot of people actually, who built the best game in the world, but thank you.
We want to talk about Supreme Commander and Forged Alliance today, but I've been through your LinkedIn and I see you've worked on some really interesting and diverse stuff. Do you want to tell us quickly what you've worked on over the last 10 years?
Yeah, so I wrote the original Infamous game, and I also directed all the voice actors and everything for that. I did the story development for Infamous 2. I didn't write the actual script for it. I left actually before that, but I did all the story development. One of the characters in the game, Lucy Quo, is actually named after a friend of mine. And then I worked on a handful of games that were canceled. Most of them canceled before they were announced, which is actually pretty common in the video game industry. I did an emergency rewrite on Dead Island Riptide. With the exception of the cinematics, I rewrote the entire game in 30 days, which was absolutely insane.
Wow.
Yeah, that was. I worked every day. The month was November, and I worked every day that month.
How come you had to do that?
Just because they had to they basically went through the game and they took out and changed a bunch of content, so they had to get rid of what they had already written and recorded, and their production window was closing, so it had to be done as fast as possible. And then I went to 2K, where I was narrative director. Most recently, I led all the writing on Mafia 3.
Yeah.
Came out almost 4 years ago now. 4 years in October, I think.
I read a little bit about that game, and the writing for that is really very well received. I heard someone say that it was the best writing they've seen ever, not for a game, just ever, which is pretty
Yeah,
cool.
we were pretty fortunate that that 2K gave us a lot of support in terms of kind of pursuing the game that we wanted to make.
Yeah.
And then we had some amazing actors who brought the characters to life and everything like that. The highlight of that actually was the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Had an exhibit on video games, and Mafia 3 was actually featured. There's probably only about 4 or 5 games in that exhibit.
Oh,
and
cool.
Mafia 3 was one of them. And I got to go over there and go to it, and that was insane.
Awesome.
Walking through, a museum as prestigious as the V&A and going, oh, here's a video game I worked on.
I don't know that museum. That's a fancy museum in London.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a real museum. It's not a gaming museum, obviously. I also saw that
it's a real museum with stuff that's really old.
Yeah, you also wrote comic books for Marvel.
Yeah, so I wrote. Actually started writing comics a long time ago, about 25 plus years ago. I wrote for 3 years. Marvel had a series that they did with the Army and Air Force exchange military here. And it was Captain America, the Avengers, Thor, that kind of stuff. So I wrote that for 3 years. And I also did Wolverine for them, and Crossbones, who is enemy of Captain America.
Right.
And I've also done my own stuff for Top Cow.
That's awesome. So you've worked on a bunch of big names there. So what about Supreme Commander and Forged Alliance then, which is what most people who watch this will be interested in? What were your roles and responsibilities on those projects?
So for Supreme Commander, I started in April of 2006 at GPG. I actually I didn't lie to get my job, but I lied to talk to Chris Taylor. So I was actually working at another company, and they shut down. And I used to work for PC Gamer magazine before I got into game development. And I kind of knew Chris from that. So I emailed him and said, hey, I'm going to be up in Seattle. Would you like to get lunch? And he said, sure, swing on by. Well, the reason I went up there was to talk to him.
Nice.
So I went up there, and he basically created the position for me.
Oh, cool.
So I have a great deal of affection for Chris. I think he's a fantastic guy.
Yeah.
So I started, and they were already working on Supreme Commander. I think that E3 of 2006 might have been when it was officially announced. I'm not 100% sure, but I remember there was an E3 presence. So the campaign was already kind of laid out in terms of the missions and things like that. But the area where I really helped was developing deepening the characterization and also with the dialogue. So it was myself, Brad, and then this guy named Jason, who was the campaign designer. And the three of us really dove into it. And Jason did an initial pass on the scripts. I wrote the cinematics that were in Supreme Commander. And then I did a final like editing / rewrite pass on all the dialogue for Supreme Commander. And then before we recorded it, I actually called it because we called it Supcom. Supcom, I called it Supcom on Broadway. And we actually went in the conference room one day and we acted out the entire script just to see, like, just to try to catch any issues with the dialogue or lines that didn't work, things like that. And then myself and Gary Wagner was the executive producer on Supcom, and he actually had a background in music. So he was like an engineer back in the 80s, like worked with some huge bands, but he couldn't go down for that. So I went down with another producer when we did all the VO recording. And we were down in LA, I think for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then once that wrapped up, then I was busy for a while. We launched the GPG store, and we did a bunch of Supreme Commander stuff. So we had posters, and I don't know if people who bought posters and stuff there remember, based on the faction, you got a letter from the faction leader. So you don't know about these?
No, not a bit.
So I'll take pictures and I'll email them to you. I still have copies. I wrote these. So like one was from Dr. Brackman, and it was saying, "Hey, thank you, blah blah. This means a lot to the Cybrans." The one for the UEF was basically some bureaucrat 32B. But anyway, so I was busy with stuff on that, and then once we wrapped up Supreme Commander, we knew we were going to do an expansion pack. Brad and Jason and I basically sat down and we figured out the entire story for Forged Alliance, and then started writing the scripts and all of that good stuff. But obviously, we knew going in broadly what it was going to be, which is why I wrote those cinematics at the end of each of the campaigns that hint at the coming of the Seraphim.
Yeah, so the ending of each faction had a different ending, didn't it? But they all sort of alluded that the Seraphim are coming.
Right. Loosely. Yeah. So like my favorite one was, I think, with Brackman and QAI, and QAI just says, they're coming, and Brackman says, what have you done?
Right.
So those all hint at the coming of the Seraphim.
Yeah. So it sounds like on Supcom, all the faction design and campaign and stuff that was kind of in place before you started.
Yeah, broadly speaking, I mean, things always change until the last minute, but most of it was there. My role on the original game is really just on the dialogue side of things.
Yeah, cool.
And then also playtesting the crap out of the game to make sure the dialogue was playing correctly.
Yeah.
Like I did hours and hours. I played that game. I can't even tell you how many times. and then would enter bugs to make sure that conversations were properly queuing, and they were playing when they should, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And did you play it just to play it, or did you only play it for professional reasons?
I'm a big RTS guy. So when I was a PC gamer, I was the person who reviewed all the RTS games. So it was a match made in heaven for me. Like I still have it installed on my computer now on Steam, and every so often I'll just jump in and I'll play against the AI.
Oh, cool! You need to come online with us. I need
to
organize.
Well, sounds like you guys have played way more than me. I'm pretty rusty. You're probably.
Oh yeah, you won't win, but I just said you should come and play.
I'm not worried about winning. I just want to survive more than like 5 minutes.
Yeah. You can play against the AI on now. Actually, we've improved the AI as well. If you come and play on Forged Alliance Forever instead of on your Steam version, they released some new AIs and upgraded ones. Plus, they made a Seraphim campaign, which you never made.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So maybe there's something for you there. So that's cool. So you're a big RTS fan. Any upcoming RTS games that you're interested in?
I watch what Creative Assembly does. I love the Total War games.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I know that the Command and Conquer redo, remaster, whatever it's called, that just recently came out. I bought it, but I haven't installed it yet. I want to play that.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried because sometimes doing that, like I have very fond memories of playing that game, and I don't want to ruin those memories.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've been going through it at the moment, and it's pretty good. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so and then obviously, and then turn-based games. So like Civilization, like Alpha Centauri is one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
So I always play the new Civ games that come out too. I wish more people made RTS games,
Yeah.
but they seem to have kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah, that's a shame. Do you think are the PC gamer and like the magazines, are they interested in that type of thing?
Um, I can't. I haven't been there for so long. I can't really say. When I was there, we were definitely interested in RTS games because we saw them as um, a very PC centric genre. So like playing a game like Supreme Commander, I know there was an Xbox version, which I mean I have it, but to me, if you really want to experience Supcom, you need to play it on PC.
Absolutely.
And so we were, because of that, we always saw that as a very, very important in terms of PC gaming, that genre.
Yeah.
So we always, we gave a lot of coverage to RTS games over the years.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember actually the Supcom story because I haven't played. I haven't been through the campaign for about 10 years, so I'm a bit rusty. But it was all about that Black Sun project, wasn't it? And UEF was building it to blow up the other factions. Is that
Yes.
what the whole thing revolved around?
Yeah, basically it was around the Black Sun, and then one of the things we did to try to increase the tension was I can't remember the character's name, but whoever radios you updates. So like through most of Supcom, they're very kind of matter of fact, but like in the last mission for the other factions especially, you can start to tell that they're starting to panic and crack because if this doesn't work, like they're all done.
Right.
That they know they're going to lose. And then that last mission is just so insane. I mean, there's so many units on screen and just everything just going on like the technology behind that game was. I don't think gas powered ever got the proper credit for
Mm,
what Supcom did
that's right.
in terms of technology.
That's right. Because even now, it's still kind of the best RTS. And you look at when it was built and the
And on the
hardware
hardware that
that
it
was
was built
available
on.
back then. Yep.
Yeah, and the fact that you could play that online, that you could do that instantaneous zoom
Yeah.
online is just crazy.
Yeah, and like, because I was having a chat to some of the other guys about this type of stuff, but at the nowadays with modern engines, a lot of that's taken care of for you. You don't
Right.
have to invent it manually. But we had like the meeting with Mike Swanson where he was talking about all the work they did manually, making all the level of details. Um, so when you zoom out, the models it uses lower quality models, that
Right.
type of thing. But and since then I've been looking at it, and you really can't see anything. It just looks perfect. So
Yeah.
they've done such a great job. Yeah, so the Black Sun, it was all about that, and then there were the different factions where I think what was it that there used to be an Earth Empire or something, and that split. Is that what happened?
Yeah. So it started off as um, so the quantum gates are created and then they go off and they begin to colonize space. And then after that goes on for a while, then the three factions start to separate. The UEF is basically the kind of Earth government, kind of the what the original governmental force becomes. The Aeon are the ones, they're the ones who actually make contact with the Seraphim, which is how they get into the way, which is their religion. And
Yeah.
then obviously the Cyberans are, machine human combinations who feel that they're being oppressed and they want to be free. So you
Yeah.
have the side that's kind of pushing their religious agenda, the side that's basically just leave us alone, we want to do our own thing, and then the side who's saying no, you all originated with us and we're going to control everything, and if you're not down with that, we're just going to destroy you.
Yeah. And were there different plans originally? Because I've seen somewhere that the Cyberans were originally called the Recyclers, and I think isn't one of the units called a replicant or something like that? I almost feel like
I think so.
originally Cybrim weren't meant to have factories. They were just meant to be completely different to the other factions.
Yeah, I don't. That's been so long. I can't remember. That might have been a. I could be wrong, but that might have been a tech thing, where
Yeah,
it was easier to have basically a base of factories, and that they were all very similar, because then they would take the same memory footprint and all that kind of stuff,
right.
versus for trying to account for this other faction who could do something that was completely different than the others. I could be
Yeah,
completely wrong, but
yeah.
that's my best guess.
Yeah, this is kind of more of a personal observation of mine because I've been thinking about how to make an RTS lately, but it almost seems like it's really incredibly difficult to give a faction a really meaningful difference without it screwing up game balance completely. They almost have to be super similar, and the differences can't be too big. And if they were, it wouldn't be Supcom. It would be some other weird game. Like,
Right? Yeah.
yeah, cool. So, and then with the Seraphim, so in that one, you were much more involved with the storyline at that point. So, what sort of process did you go through to arrive with the story that you got?
So we knew that we knew pretty early on. Well, let me rephrase that. The production of Supreme Commander actually went really well. It was one of those two games in terms of production and getting the work done were probably two of the best planned games I've ever worked on. So even as we were finaling Supcom, we were already starting work on Forged Alliance. Um, and so we knew that we wanted to bring in a new faction. We knew that we wanted to be the Seraphim because of their connection, their pre-existing connection to the game.
Yeah,
And so then we decided, hey, we want to basically foreshadow that with the mid-credit endings, cinematics. And then you start getting discussions of, okay, well, what does that mean? Can you play as them? And, like you said, is there a campaign? And we
yeah,
decided no, that we wanted to stick with the original three. And then it's like, okay, there's this completely alien faction. How do you, like you just don't, like if ET landed outside, you wouldn't just go, hey, buddy, like you wouldn't be able to talk. So like that's why at the beginning of the game, like you can't understand. And then if I remember right, I think Brackman creates a translator, and then after that you can begin in like the second or third mission, somewhere around there, you can begin to understand them, what they're saying and things like that.
yeah.
So then it was just part of that too is saying, hey, okay, it's not a full size game, it's an expansion pack. How many missions can we do? Things like that, and then basically just beating the whole thing out.
Right. Cool. I don't actually remember the plot of Forged Alliance either. I think just the other three factions are rallying because there's a big invasion, right? And they're just
Yeah, so
joined
they come
forces.
in. Sorry, I'm actually going to look that up too. I can't remember how it ends, which is hilarious since Um, yeah, so obviously the opening cinematic is that shot of the island and the palm trees are moving, and then you see the giant ships coming in, and then
Yeah.
we cut to, I believe it was General Clark, who's trying to evacuate people, and then they all get killed. Um, and then so yeah, then it's just rallying around that, and then if I remember right, the the princess for the Aeon is fighting an internal conflict because some of them want to welcome the Seraphim since that's where they got their religion. And if I remember right, I think there's actually a mission where you have to fight like a rival commander,
Right.
so that sorry, wow, that was long. That came out in 2007. That was a
Yeah.
long time
Yeah.
ago. um, so so yeah, so it was taking those elements and then figuring out what we want to do. It's funny when you email me, I was starting to think about stuff like what are the decisions we made. And if you remember, this Dostja, who's a Cybern commander who dies very early in Forged Alliance. The reason she died was because recording Russian dialect VO was so difficult that it was like And the woman who played her is an amazing voice actress. Like, she's fantastic. It's just there were so many lines that over time she would get tired, and the Russian would turn into Irish or like some other thing. So we were like, and we were on such an abbreviated schedule for the recording. It was like, we can't do that again. So I was like, we're just gonna kill her. So that's why we killed her.
Oh man, so she's not actually Russian.
No, if I remember right, the woman's name is Mary Elizabeth.
Right.
Um,
Maybe you could have
and she's
saved some
done.
time by getting a Russian person to do the Russian
So
accent.
we could have. So the interesting thing is to the American ear, a real Russian accent sounds fake
Right.
because we hear so many bad Russian accents on TV.
Yeah. You can't actually get an authentic one because you look
Yeah,
dodgy.
exactly. Now, and this is also, this was 13 some odd years ago. The other thing that's changed too is, and this wasn't really something that you did in the video game industry back then, but like in Mafia 3, we had tons of regional dialects because there's actually, I think 19, something like that, dialects in Louisiana. So what we did is we actually hired a dialect expert who coaches actors.
Yeah.
To get, and that's what we should have done. But this is pre-dialect expert days.
Right.
When it was just us in the booth trying to say, hey, how does this sound? Does it actually sound good? Things like that.
Yeah,
And then
cool.
it also worked out because the other thing it really showed was, that decision aside, it also showed how serious the Seraphim were.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a typical story like, oh, they come in and they're really bad, but nobody dies. It's like, no, somebody come in and a very prominent character on the Cybern side. So that definitely played a role too. So it showed that they weren't messing around. Like, and this main commander for the Cyberns is just killed.
Yeah. Were there any other weird reasons for things happening that
No, that's the only one I really remember.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was pretty straightforward, and we're straightforward to the point where, if I remember right, I'll need to check this with Brad. I think we were actually done early. I remember him coming to my office and going, "Hey, we're done," and I'm like, "Done with what?" He's like, "With Forged Alliance." It's like, I thought we had a week left. So, like I said, the production on it went really, really well from my point of view.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, and what about critical decisions that were made on the project, not just relating to your own work, but just to the whole project in general? Can you think of anything that really stands out as a turning point, good or bad?
No, the only thing I remember early on, there was a struggle making missions, and I can't remember why. I think it had something to do. It is most likely technical related with the number of units on the screen and the introduction of that fourth faction.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of games like the Blizzard games and stuff, and even the original Supreme Commander, why you have 3 factions. There's underlying engineering reasons for that. So if I remember right, there were some engineering hurdles that had to be overcome by adding the Seraphim. Because I have a memory, I can't remember what mission it is, but I remember there's islands and stuff, and I remember just we for whatever reason we just had to work so hard on that mission to get it to work. Fortunately, I can't remember why. Like I said, it's been so long ago.
Yeah.
But we did, like I said, the advantage we had is we got a pretty good head start on it. Like I said, we started working on it before Supreme Commander even shipped.
Yeah.
And we already had some broad ideas.
Yeah. All right.
I think some of the maybe the biggest decisions maybe were around the units. Because how do you have these amazing, the apex units, and then like, well, do we add new ones? And then like in multiplayer, what are the Seraphim? Like the Seraphim had that giant bomber. And then there's a lot of game balance that goes into that, where like, hey, they're super powerful, and we show them in the campaign just initially just laying waste to people, but we can't do that in multiplayer because then it's unbalanced. So then there's that conversation of like, okay, well, people are just going to have to understand that multiplayer, the units are balanced differently for multiplayer play versus how they might be in a single player campaign where we're trying to get tell a story and also, you know, get a specific response and part of the player, which is like, wow, these aliens are crazy powerful.
Yeah, I
So
think
you gotta have those two balances.
people are willing to overlook some artistic creativity
Yeah.
in a trailer or a video. Um, what are what are your thoughts on Command and Conquer style campaign, which is like, okay, Jeff told me that there were sort of two big camps of people working on Supreme Commander, and some people wanted the full-fledged Command and Conquer style missions, and other people just wanted like a really good skirmish type of fight. And I guess Supreme Commander ended up somewhere in the middle. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think those discussions, in terms specifically about Supreme Commander, I think those discussions predated me because, like I said, the campaign was already underway, so they must have had
Yeah.
made that decision. Um, I like both. Like I like just cranking up the AI and just seeing what happens, just in, you know, in a standalone skirmish thing.
Yeah.
But I also like, obviously, I like stories because that's what I do for a living. But I think the thing about RTS games that's both challenging and cool in terms of telling stories is you're not, the challenging part is you're not seeing the people. So if you look down at Supreme Commander, it's basically, if you didn't know what's going on, it's just giant robots. Like it's very difficult to know that there's people inside of there.
Yeah.
So that side of thing, like you really have to rely on VO and things like that for your storytelling. But the plus side of that is this, the campaign is what adds the kind of mythology, the world building, all the backstory for the units that if you didn't have the campaign, that stuff wouldn't exist. So as you play through, let's say you're playing a Cybern and you're starting to build the units and stuff, and you play through the campaign, you're like, oh, I understand. This is how Dr. Brackman views the world and how that has kind of influenced the units that the Cyberns are going to create. And if you just did a skirmish mode, you wouldn't have that because there probably wouldn't even be a Dr. Brackman. Or if there was, it was just like in a loading screen. You'd be like, hello, Commander, go out and, you know, smash skulls.
Is that stuff important though?
I think for a lot of players it is. I think it depends on what you're looking for. I mean, I think it's something that almost every genre, except maybe open world games, struggles with. Like even like shooters. On one hand, you have, you know, Half-Life and Portal. On the other hand, you have Doom, which is basically, hey, demons have overrun Earth, kill them. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it depends on what audience you think you want to get, which gaming demographic, and how much overlap there is between the two of those. So like for me, I know when they've added, like I used to play tons and tons and tons of Battlefield. And even when they played the campaigns, when they added the campaigns, I never played the campaigns because I wasn't playing it for that. I was playing it for multiplayer. So I think the advantage that RTS has is that for the players who want it, it's there. And those who don't, they can just go in and play multiplayer.
Yeah, I think multiplayer is so brutally difficult in the beginning that you almost have no chance of joining it until you've been through the campaign, and maybe it gives a sort of gateway, like an entrance into the game that way.
Well, and especially for a game like Supreme Commander, which has levels of difficulty, but also gameplay that really isn't present in a game like Command and Conquer. Like the way you can set up the various routes for the transports, how the resource system works, and how you can piggyback factories. So like to your point, if you just threw somebody in a multiplayer game, they'd be destroyed before they even knew what was going on. Versus going through a campaign where those things are added, because that's the other part of it. In addition to telling story, you're also pacing out when those new units come online. So it's also acting as a very extended tutorial in that regard, because you're allowing the player to get accustomed to the new units and the new gameplay features that are being you know, rolled out over the course of the campaign. And then if they do jump in multiplayer, then it's like, okay, I understand how all these various elements, at least on a basic level, operate. Versus, good luck.
Yeah, so there's it's almost not contradictory, but lots of different things that go into the writing of the campaign, then, isn't there? Because it's like you say, it's a tutorial system, and that's a very specific complicated, hard to manage topic, but then also we want it to be exciting and fun.
Right.
So you had multiple objectives at the same time. Were they the same people managing all of that, or were there different people casting votes?
No, it was largely. I mainly worked with Brad, so all of that, since he was the lead designer, all that kind of all the mission design, but then also all the system design, that all basically funneled through him at some point.
Yeah.
So I would interface with Brad a lot and get, hey, we're going to do this, or excuse me, we've changed this mission. Believe it or not, the really challenging part was I wrote the manual for Supreme Commander, and I wanted to jump off the roof because taking some of those concepts that were so complicated and explaining them like in 3 sentences was incredibly difficult. That was actually the worst part of working on Supreme Commander, was writing the manual.
No. Did they put limits on how much you're allowed to write?
Yeah, so the publisher, in this case THQ, they don't just say, hey, you write a manual and it can be as big as you want. They'll tell you how many pages it can be, and then also the dimensions, which then determines the word count on each page. So they would say, hey, the manual is going to be, I can't remember how many pages it was, 18 pages, as an example. That's how long it's going to be, and then you have to figure out how you're going to roll that information out in the manual, but then also have information on the specific units.
Why do they put in restrictions like that?
It's cost. The larger it is, the more expensive it is to produce.
Right.
So like a manual that's say 30 pages, that's about yay big, is much cheaper than say a 200-page manual.
Yeah.
That's mainly, and then the other part of it too is this is back also when PC games were still being sold in stores.
Yep.
So also the dimensions had to fit inside the PC case. It couldn't be too long, otherwise you wouldn't be able to close it. So there's also, in addition to the cost, there's also like just basic retail mechanical things that factor into that.
Damn,
like you can't,
physics.
if you like, I still have my box copy of Supcom. Like you couldn't fit a 200-page manual in there. Like it just wouldn't close.
Yeah, makes sense. So what else did you work on besides the in-game dialogue, a bit of campaign stuff? You had the manual, I guess websites, propaganda.
Websites, propaganda. I also worked on the other games that GPG made, so like Space Siege. They were finishing Dungeon Siege 2 Broken World when I started there. And then so I worked on the Dungeon Siege 2 Deluxe Edition, I think it was. Like it has all this bonus material. So like there's a short story that I wrote that's in there. And then various other, new pitches for new games and things like that.
Yeah.
So for the first game it was mainly the manual and then the dialogue stuff, and then for the second game it was mapping out the campaign, the cinematics,
Yeah.
being there when we recorded all the VO, all that kind of stuff.
You recorded video.
Oh, VO, sorry, the
Oh,
voiceover.
voiceover. Sorry, I
Yeah.
misheard. Yep, cool. Yeah. All right. And I've heard that you created a Seraphim language.
Yeah, so it's based on H.P. Lovecraft. So all that kind of the use of the consonants and the vowels, it all comes from like Cthulhu and all that kind of stuff. That was the originating point of that. It's funny. I actually went online and people have started assigning grammar rules to it.
Oh.
To like saying, oh, well, in this case, since this is here, like this means like, and I'm like, I just made it all up. but I guess the guy with an English degree, part of my brain was maybe subconsciously drawing those connections. But yeah, so it was going through, and it was all based on Cthulhu and just how those various names would take weird vowels and consonants and place them in interesting positions. And the reason I did that is I wanted it to be weird, but not so weird that it was completely incomprehensible. Which maybe it still is borderline incomprehensible a little bit for some of them, but that's the balance that we had to strike, because you have an alien race that does not speak any Earth language, doesn't speak Chinese or Russian or French or anything. So, but how do you still have names that represent who they are as aliens, but that are still comprehensible to a degree to the player?
Yeah, and still
So
recognizable words.
yeah, exactly. So, but whereas the Cthulhu thing, which is also very weird, like if you go through all the H.P. Lovecraft names like Dagon, Dagon's not that weird, but you know what I mean? Like all those kind of names, it's like, okay, well, here's kind of a template for how you could do that and still have them be weird, but a little bit comprehensible.
Do you think it's a bit hard to work with a faction that is so alien?
It was challenging. It was also really challenging to do the VO. Because a lot of times when you're working with voice actors, what usually happens is it depends on the role. So if they're one of the main characters, like over time they really have time to dive into who the character is and really get to know that character and also define that character.
Yeah.
It's challenging when it's somebody who comes in for 4 hours, because you take about 15 minutes and you explain the game to them. And in the case of Forge Alliance, we actually had game footage that we could show them and say, hey, here's how it's going to be presented. But you have to explain the game to them. You have to explain who their faction is, and you have to explain who their character is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of information to convey in 15 minutes. So that's definitely part of that too.
Right. Yeah. And so can you pronounce some Seraphim words for us?
Let me try. Let me go on the internet here.
What I can do.
What is there one that's controversial?
Well, yeah, we can, if you're up for it, I'll pull up the units list and we can just run through it and pronounce a couple of them.
Oh yeah, so was it Heth, Aya, Yen, their mass? I don't remember I can't remember if the H is silent. I think for the resources, like mass is HYAL. I assume the Y is silent because we wouldn't have it be y'all. Atha, Yath, Shavo.
What's the Tech 1 artillery called?
Tech 1 artillery. I think that one is Thui. Something like that. Yeah, I think the Z is silent.
Thui. All right, because we've been calling it a Zui.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Thuis.
And then you got to do it in that, that I can't mimic the actor, that deep Seraphim voice.
See, is that why we didn't get a Seraphim campaign? Is you just couldn't explain it you couldn't have them speaking in English to the player and telling you what to do, so you wouldn't even know what your mission was.
Yeah, you'd have to have Brackman's translator the whole time.
Yeah, which doesn't quite work on the first mission, does it?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it's fun looking at these though, like Otham,
yeah.
Athana.
Yeah.
Otham.
We call them Othams. What about the experimental bomber?
Where's that one at? Down at the bottom here. Submarine Hunter. Oh, the Syntha?
The what?
The strategic bomber?
Syntha. No, the experimental bomber.
Oh, I don't see that on this list that I'm looking at.
Maybe I'll share my screen.
Yeah, you put me on the spot, man. The funny thing is about this is I'm sure at some point Brad and I were either in my office or his office just laughing and talking about all these names.
What about this one?
Awasa.
Awasa, yeah. We got that one right. This one?
Celine.
Celine, yeah. Cool. So that's a Thui. What's this one?
lilSidlil,
La Isle and a them?
them, yeah, or tham,
Them. Cool.
depending on
Oh,
how hard you want to hit those A's.
this one's a good
The
one.
the mobile missile launcher, that's the one with the Y. I cannot remember for the life of me how to pronounce that one.
Right. Yathissa. What
Yeah.
about next one?
Il Shavo or Il Shavo.
Yeah, Ishavo. We say Ilshiva.
Oh, okay.
This one?
Um, I remember that one. Is it Yen? That one might be Yenny. I can't remember if the Z is silent.
Right. Cool. All right, let's skip. So we already did the Otham.
Yeah.
We can do the
Oh, Usa Ah,
Usa O. Usa O.
Athana,
Yeah.
Une.
We added this unit. You probably
Oh,
don't
that's
even know
yours.
it.
Well, that's a good name, dude. That
Well,
fits right in.
yeah. I don't know who named it. It just probably happened 8 years ago or something. Yeah.
Um,
And then, okay, Tech 2 Destroyer.
yeah, I don't remember that one.
Yeah.
Ithalu for the other one. I can't remember if it's how hard we hit the TH. If it was th or t.
Yeah.
That's the hard thing to remember about that.
All right, let's just do the experimentals and then I think we're done. This one?
Yolana Os.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. So that's good. And somewhere here should be a land experimental. There we go.
It's either Thotha or Thota.
Right. Ythota. Ythotha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we did pretty good.
Yeah, that's not so bad. Oh,
Yeah.
you had asked me if that Harms unit was named after me, and it is. So actually, several of the units are named after people on the team.
Yeah. Cool. That's a good unit. You got a good unit.
I did.
Luckily, you didn't get a Selen or something like that. That would have been an
I know,
insult.
right?
All right. Stopping the screen share now. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that was my next question, actually. So I've got some questions from the community because
Sure.
I told them I was doing this. So people asked, did you consider having a timer or some sort of timer in the campaign? Because at the moment, I think players, the campaign just moves to the next step when you achieve a goal. And if the player wants to, they can just camp in their base and make like 100 gunships or something, then fulfill the objective and they just stomp the whole map.
I don't recall there being any discussions about a timer. I know, in fact, as you say that, I remember there was one map specifically, even when I was playtesting for the VO, I would camp and then just build everything up and then just kind of roll through, although I was playing obviously for different reasons. I have no memory of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure I know you already talked to Chris, but I'm sure Chris would have had strong opinions on that one way or another.
Okay, I'm talking to
as
him
the
this
RTS
week,
master.
actually. I'll
Yeah, I would ask him that because
yeah,
that kind of decision probably would have come from Chris.
cool. What about, did the story writing influence the units in any way?
I think some of the units in Forged Alliance, especially for the Seraphim, were influenced by what we were doing fictionally with them as a faction. But the primary driver was always gameplay and also ensuring that they stayed balanced.
And on Supreme Commander, that probably happened, but before you entered the
Yeah,
project.
that would have been before I was there. Yeah.
What about what was Chris's influence on your work?
So Chris was, as the founder of GPG and basically the creator of Supreme Commander, his influence across the board was great. Like, I talked to Chris all the time. He wouldn't get so much into the nitty gritty of like the story stuff. It would just make. He was more like, hey, is this accomplishing how I kind of want the game to feel, so to speak? Things like that. He did make us change the title. The original title was Forced Alliance.
Forced.
Forced. That was the title that Brad and I came up with, and Chris changed it to Forged.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Forced. I thought Forged Alliance was a term from World War II or something.
Probably there. I remember there's probably a reason he wanted to change it. So.
Righto. But he never just like walked into the room, had a look, and then dropped some bomb, made you redo a whole bunch of work, and walked out.
No.
Okay.
Not to me anyway.
Yeah.
And the other meetings I was with with him, he always struck me as a very fair-minded guy who appreciated everything that everybody else on the team was trying to do.
Yeah. And there were no last-minute rewrites at the end?
Yes, there were. There were. It's funny you say that. There were rewrites when I was in the recording studio. So that's about as last minute as you get. I remember one time Brad calling me. I was in the recording studio and Brad called me and said, "Hey, have you already recorded?" I can't remember what it was, but have you already recorded this? And one time I said no, and he's like, "Okay, well, we got to change it." And I was like, "Okay." So I rewrote it all on the fly and then updated it in the database that we were recording. And there was at least one other time where he called and I was like, "Sorry, dude, we already recorded that." And then at that point, either just got to make it work or you don't have that line play or figure something else out. But yeah, that's about as last minute as it gets.
Yeah.
You know, and it got to the point where now that I'm thinking about it, it's coming back a little bit. I would tell them which actor we were going to record and who they were playing, so that they knew, hey, we're gonna record the QAI today. So they knew that if there were any last minute changes after we were done, I think that was the actor's name was Jack Angel. After we were done recording Jack, there was no more QAI. So they also had that schedule. So that even prompted those last minute calls.
Right. This some of us are interested in indie game development. There's some people who are trying to build their own RTSs on non-existent or tiny budgets. How can very small teams with limited budgets get voice acting in their game?
So there's kind of three. Well, so there's SAG actors, which is union actors, and then there's non-SAG. So if you want SAG, you have to pay union scale, and that's actually more expensive. Sometimes SAG actors will do non-union work for lower scale. Scale 1 for SAG for 4 hours, I think, is about $1,500. So it's not cheap, especially if you have 50,000 lines and you can record about 100 lines an hour. Like, you can see how that adds up very quickly. For an indie game, the thing I would do is probably seek out either people that they might know, who are taking like acting classes at a college, things like that, and see if they'd be willing to do it and have that be their contribution to the game.
Yeah.
Or if there's voice actors who are just starting out, who might be willing to do it for experience.
Yeah.
The other part of it is the actual recording of it. So when you go into the booth, like in a professional setting, you have an engineer there, you have a professional recording studio, you record it. It then goes to an audio editor who actually basically slices all the lines out of a giant Pro Tools session. And then it's usually a batch process, but they edit them to get them within a specific time frame and things like that. So even outside of the recording, there's a lot of work that goes to it. But again, for an indie game, if you can find somebody who's into audio and just starting out and wants to contribute to the game, you could probably get a semi-pro up-and-comer to do that kind of work for you. But it's more than just recording the voice actors. Like, you can't just get your microphone and use Microsoft Record or whatever. Like,
yeah.
But on the plus side, that stuff the price for that stuff has really come down. Like, you can get those sound sheets that are basically like the styrofoam or whatever, like that really kind of hard black thing with the triangles. You can get a couple of those and just basically do it like in the corner of your house or even a closet. Because of COVID, actually a lot of voice actors down in LA have actually done that to closets in their homes and then bought a microphone, and they're doing that at home now.
Yeah.
And they're just doing it, and you can do it all via Zoom or whatever, however you want to connect.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty common. Record, like there were times I'd be in LA and I'd record an actor who was in New York.
So you would be like having a video chat with them, talking them through what you want, and they would record it themselves in front of you.
So in this case, it would be, I was in a recording studio, they were in a recording studio, and we talked, and we had a direct connection between the two. But you could do what you just said, which is you have them and then they record it themselves, and then they capture the files, and then they put the files up on an FTP or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you take it from there.
The other thing I heard suggested one time, it was on a GDC presentation about indie game audio, is to use mumblers instead of actual voiceover. So you can just have someone making a little noise like or something like that.
Peanut style.
Peanut style.
Yeah, so you know the peanut strip, they have the cartoons, and the teacher would always talk to like nobody ever knew what the teacher is.
Yeah, and then you can just reuse.
Yeah, that is an option. Like having text on the screen is way cheaper than having a completely voiceover game.
Yeah, and the other problem with voiceover, besides the expense, is it just locks everything in. Just like how you were saying, you can't change things afterwards, or the cost of doing it probably means you won't do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's times where like even like we do fully mocap cinematics now with the actors on stage, and we do full body performance capture. We're capturing their body, but also their voice, their face. And that is so expensive that after you do that, it's very expensive to go back and redo a scene. Now, you always budget for that, so you can do that, but it's a small fraction. It's like we can do that for 5% of what we've done. It's not like we can do it for half.
Yeah, that's the Mafia game you're talking about.
Yeah, so like that's how we did on Mafia, but like like the Naughty Dog games, that's how they do it. Pretty much everybody does. For their cinematics now, do full body motion capture.
Cool. All right. And back to Supcom, were you satisfied in the end with the result?
Oh yeah, I mean it's like I said, I still play it sometimes. I have a lot of great memories of working on that game. Working at GPG at that time. Without Chris, I wouldn't be in the game industry. Like that's just the bottom line. Without him making that position for me, I would not be making video games. And and I've been in video games now for 16 years, and it's because of Chris. So I have a lot of fond memories of working there, working with him. I loved working with Brad. Like we would just be doing story stuff, and we have whiteboard in my office. We map it out like that. I just have awesome memories of doing all that stuff. And then the game, it came out, it reviewed really well. Like I think it's at 86 on Metacritic, the base game. And then I don't know if it's still the case, but when Forged Alliance came out, it actually got better review scores than the base game.
Yeah.
Which was super awesome to see. And and then to hear that you guys are still playing the game, that you not only are playing the game, but you took it and kind of made it your own, and you've added to it and expanded to it. Like that is unbelievably awesome to hear.
Yeah, well, that's just a testament to the way it was built. That it it was built moddable, which it didn't need to be. So we can actually make improvements. That we got given a map editor, so we can make our 8,000 maps in the map file. The game had long legs because that's how it was built at cost. Yeah. Like it would have cost a lot of money to build it that way, and it's just terrific.
Yeah, that's also how PC games were made back then. Like they were designed to support a mod community. Like if you look at Total Annihilation, which was obviously the precursor to Supcom, that was the same. Like there were so many units for Total Annihilation. There were so many maps. Like there's probably thousands and thousands of maps for Total Annihilation. So which Chris also created. So I think you brought that same sensibility to Supcom.
Yeah. Um, and is there anything that you would change?
Um, it's tough. I wish we could have done. Um, I wish we could have done more with the Cybrans. Like I wish, because to me they were the most interesting faction. Just not only because of how they played, but also their kind of philosophy of, hey, we just want to, just leave us alone. Like they were fighting for something that I think a lot of people can relate to. I wish we could have continued those stories. There was obviously a gap between that game and Supreme Commander 2. So I wish we could have continued those stories. The other thing, it's not something I would change, but I wish we could have done is we were actually in the process of instead of license, because Chris and GPG owned the Supreme Commander IP at the time. So one of our plans was to actually do Supreme Commander novels and comic books. So I actually commissioned a sci-fi writer named Richard Paul Russo, who's a two-time Philip K. Dick Award winner, to write a Supreme Commander novel, and he actually wrote it. And one of the artists, I believe his name was Sung, did this amazing cover art for it. And then some other things happened with the company. We were talking to printers and all this kind of stuff, and we just couldn't get it done. But the book was awesome, and it was actually kind of a prologue to the first game. And the kind of tack that we took was a lot of those licensed game novels appeal to the fans. The primary audience is the fans of the game, which is obviously very important. But the really important thing for us is that we wanted to have a great sci-fi novel so that somebody who had never heard of the game could pick up and read it.
Yeah.
Go, wow, this is really cool. And then go, oh, wow, this is based on a game. And then maybe they'd go buy the game.
Yeah.
Versus just speaking only to people who'd already purchased the game, try to get both.
Yeah, so in a way it becomes an ad.
Yeah, exactly. So and then, but yeah, that I would, it's not something I would change. I just wish that was something that we could have seen all the way through, because the novel was great.
Yeah, I think we actually have a copy of that novel, though. I think it got released electronically because people
Oh,
talk
really?
about it. Or there is definitely a story that someone made. I haven't read it, but
Well, if it says it's by Richard Paul Russo,
I'll get back to you on that one.
that's the official Supreme Commander novel.
Yeah, well, otherwise we should release it. Let's release the. Is that still kicking about somewhere on a USB drive?
I don't know if I have it. It's probably tied up in I don't even know who owns the Supreme Commander IP.
Square Enix.
Yeah, Square. So in order to do something like that, officially release it, you'd have to have their permission and have them sign off on it.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So it probably won't ever see the light of day, is my guess.
I think they're all too busy swimming in their pile of money to talk to me. We can try it. Okay, we heard that there was actually a plan for more missions in the campaign, that it was 12 and it got cut back to 6. Do you remember what any of the other missions were about? Were they all about the main plot line with Black Sun, or was there some sort of side campaign?
To be honest, I don't remember. I remember talking, I think that reduction had happened right before I came, which is one of the reasons that the campaign was being rewritten. I doubt that they all had to do with the Black Sun. They might have delved more into into faction specific stories. But yeah, I can't speak beyond that. That's something that I'm sure Chris remembers, because he probably made that decision.
Yeah. Another one is with the Forged Alliance campaign. So there was no Seraphim campaign, but also the other missions. There's no real campaigns for each faction. Like Cyberne and UEF either. Was there a bigger plan and it got cut?
No, what we planned for Forged Alliance is pretty much what we made.
Yeah.
There's probably some kind of additional story stuff that we originally had planned to try to do that we just couldn't fit in. But we didn't start off with like, hey, we're going to do 24 missions, and no, now it got cut down to this. Like we knew very early on what the scope of the game, since it was an expansion pack, what
Yeah.
the scope was going to be, and we pretty much molded it to that.
Is the campaign very expensive to make those missions?
Um, yeah, I mean, everything in games is expensive.
Yeah.
Because they involve so many departments. So you have the campaign designer, you have the people who actually go in, the level editors that who actually go in and do everything. You have the systems designers. I don't think we really had specific encounter designers on Supcom, but that's something that's really taken off recently. Whereas you have somebody who designs the game mission, but the actual encounters are designed by a separate team, and then the mission designer will pick from a library of encounters and populate their mission with that.
Encounters, you mean like the specific
The
units that
specific
fight
fights.
you? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so there's all that. There's the engineering work. There's art. Art is actually super expensive to do.
The art.
In the art, yeah.
Yeah.
It's very expensive to do in a video game just because you have to make so much of it.
Yeah, but you like, I mean, you already had that. So just the idea of adding an extra 12 missions to the campaign doesn't seem like you would need any extra art for that. You just need to.
You would need art for those specific units. Then you would need the if you weren't. I can't remember if we reused like the ballistics and the explosions, but those would be new art assets. There'd be new sound effects attached to that.
Yeah.
And then there'd be either I can't remember how it specifically broke down if it was an engineering task or technical art to
Yeah.
make sure that the units could traverse across the map
Yeah.
properly. So there's often things that are going on under the hood that you would normally not necessarily think about.
Right. Fair enough. And what about, did you guys ever consider introducing choice? Because I think that in the campaigns, there's just only one way to play each mission. I don't think you
Um,
get to choose which way you go.
no, not really. And that was, I think, largely driven by the fact of the way the missions would unlock. That you used to have a certain area, and then the next area would unlock, and then the next area would unlock. Um, I could be. I don't ever remember having conversations around that. And I think it's just that's kind of how RTS games were made back then. Like there wasn't as much. Well, sorry to phrase that. Games in general back then. I don't think there was as much expectation on the part of the audience to have player choice
Yeah.
as there is now.
And are you familiar with TA battle tactics,
Um,
which are the sort of like light training missions in Total Annihilation, where they just sort of don't try and do any plot, but just try and teach you how to play the game better?
that sounds familiar, but that's been so long ago.
Yeah. So one of the questions that the community had was, did you ever consider making something like that?
I don't remember ever having those kind of discussions.
Okay, cool. Any interesting stories that you have? For example, we found out that a computer magazine named the Monkey Lord unit, which was actually meant to be called the Spiderbot.
Um, no, I think all the interesting stories I've already told you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was. No, I can't think of any really.
that's cool. Anything you would do differently today in light of using today's new tools, your new experiences, new processes? I guess you're already saying that one about the encounter design team. What else would be different?
I think there'd be a higher fidelity of storytelling now. Um, Back then, it was really hard to make cinematics. So the cinematics that it was really hard, and we had a pretty small cinematics team, and it was led by this guy named Steve. So basically, the cinematics that we made were the extent of what we could actually do. So I think those are easier to make now in technology. Like as an example, if you use Unreal, it has a built-in cinematic tool called Matinee. So as tools of as storytelling has kind of matured in video games, the tools have matured along with that. and giving you more tools to tell stories that didn't really exist back then.
Yeah.
So I think we could have done higher fidelity kind of interstitial cinematics and things like that, which have further developed the characters and add more depth to the plot. That would be that would be the thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been great to actually see the characters and see them talking and acting, and
Yeah.
it would have made them more real. Any ideas that you couldn't put in an RTS that you might add to another one? Not even just about storytelling, but just about, what would be cool in a new RTS.
I would really like to play a full blown zombie apocalypse RTS.
That sounds cool.
Like if you play World War Z, they have a lot of zombies on screen, and like that would be, I think doing that in a traditional RTS game would be a lot of fun and really cool.
Maybe like a tower defense.
People have memories of the original StarCraft with that first Zerg rush
Yeah.
and how overwhelming it was. I actually went back and played StarCraft like a year and a half ago. There's like 6 Zergs, but but at the time it was like, oh my gosh, there's so many. So I think it'd be cool to do that. I actually and maybe do some genre blending of things. So the game I worked on before Supreme Commander was an RTS game called Rise and Fall, made by Stainless Steel Studios, and it had traditional RTS elements. But then you had a power up meter, and once the power up meter was maxed, you could hit a button, and then you went in, and there's a 3D action game, and you played as a hero on the battlefield.
Wow.
So you're like, it was just like any other over the third person action game, and you played as Alexander the Great and Cleopatra, and you're bashing guys and shooting arrows and things like this, and then it would zoom back out.
Yeah.
And I always thought that there was a lot of development issues with that game, but that idea of taking those two genres and figuring out a way to combine them would be, I think, is awesome.
Yeah. There's also that game Natural Selection. Do you know that one?
Sounds familiar.
It's a 3D shoot 'em up. So you just run around blowing things up. I've never played it, but someone was explaining it the other day. But one player doesn't do that. They get the top-down view and they can see everyone running around, and they kind of verbally tell them what to do and where to go.
Yeah, there was a period of time in the early 2000s. It wasn't Relic, but another RTS developer made a game like that. Yeah. And it was, I remember playing that, and one player would do the resource management and build the structures and kind of call out where the enemies were, and then the other players were in third person action mode.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, that was I cannot for the life of me remember what it was called, but yeah, it had kind of a fantasy medieval setting.
Right. Do you know about our Nomads project?
No.
I might share my screen again. 1 second. Welcome to Nomads, the 5th faction that is currently under development for about 8 years, maybe 10 years, I don't know. But it's starting to come together. I think the team of developers has changed hands many times, but it's coming along. So basically the community's making their own faction. It's some sort of space mercenaries, lost somehow, came back. They have an experimental transport where they can drop things like other experimentals, but also ships. Laser experimental. You can see all the sort of units they've got. So that's pretty much the Nomads faction. My question for you as a storyteller is, what would you do with a mercenary campaign?
I would figure out at a high level, I would figure out why they're mercenaries. Is it because, for example, have they been oppressed? Do they come from a planet that was conquered by, say, the UEF, and this was the response to that? And then figure out who their leaders are, and then kind of go from there. But I think you need to figure out why they're mercenaries. So just like the the contact with the Seraphim led to the way, which then obviously had a huge impact. I'd figure out what, yeah, why they are mercenaries and what that means to be mercenaries in the Supreme Commander universe.
Yeah.
Um, are they for hire? Like, does the UEF hire them and say, hey, there's a band of cyberns out somewhere and we want you to go in and do the dirty work we don't want to do?
Yeah.
Are they just in it for themselves or that kind of thing?
Yeah. No, that all sounds good.
Sorry for the cat meowing in the background.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was really cool.
they've made their own campaign as well. So they actually have a storyline and voice acting, and custom
Oh,
maps.
wow.
So they've been going to town on it. But one thing that's quite interesting about it, the way they made the campaign, is that actually I think um, happens in the same timeline as your campaign in Supreme Commander,
Okay.
but they've made it to make sense so that all the events that happen in the original campaign still make sense having nomads in it. So that's kind of a cute little thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So there's two different campaigns we've got going because we've got the Seraphim campaign that they've made. I can send you a video on that one, and
Yeah, that'd be
the
great.
Nomads campaign as well. So they've been doing lots of different stuff with voice acting and that. It's a
That looks
huge
like a
project.
giant experimental unit.
Yeah, that's the transport.
Yeah,
So
that's really cool.
this transport can pick up that experimental, and then this can shoot while in the transport.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, they yeah they've done some nice things here. Okay, well that's it for Nomads. I'm gonna start running out of questions soon. What about? Do you have any more nostalgic items? So you're talking about those letters that you got in the case. That would be really nice to see. Have you got anything else that might be classed as cool nostalgia?
Mm, I mean, I have signed copies of the game still because I always get signed copies of games I work on. I still have the original posters somewhere. They were all the ones that we sold in the store were signed by the team. And the way we did is we laid them out and we actually put on white gloves so you wouldn't get smudges and everything all over them.
Right.
And then we go in shifts and everybody would sign them. I don't think I have any of the signed posters. I think I just have the regular poster.
Yeah.
But the letters. I wish it's funny. I wish I had the novel, but I almost wish I had Sung's art even more because it was so awesome. Like the cover for that novel was just amazing. Um, so yeah, I probably have a few other things tucked away in a box somewhere out in the garage.
Cool.
Every so
Well,
often I'll go out there and it's like video, memories of my career.
if you ever pull that box out and you find some good stuff, please send it through to us, and I'll just somehow publish it so people can see.
Yeah, I'll grab the letters will probably be the easiest thing to get. So I'll get those and send you pictures in the next week or so.
Oh, cool, great. Thank you. So that's it for my questions. Is there anything else that you would be interested in talking about?
Um, no, the only thing that occurred to me was another conversation point, and maybe Brad talked about this, was we had a lot of discussion about the quantum gates and whether or not they worked in space. Because in the opening cinematic, they're in space. In fact, it's, space held such hope for humanity, a fresh start. I can't remember what I wrote. And then it shows a ship going through them, but in the game, they're always on land. And we had tons of discussions about that because we were worried that if we showed them in space, it was going to create the expectation in the player that there
Yeah,
was going to be a space element
yeah,
to that. So that's why we always showed them, even though we showed them in that opening cinematic, we never showed them in space again. So, but we had hours and hours and hours of conversations about that.
yeah. Because you could just make a nuke kind of by dropping something from space and just launch it
Yes.
straight at the opponent. So that
Yeah.
would kind of not work. I think the Nomads team have that issue as well because the Nomads don't have quantum gateways.
Oh, okay.
They actually have faster than light ships, so they just drive around. But for some reason, they can't deploy anything to planets due to some technical reason. I can't remember what that is, because
Right.
otherwise they could just, why don't you bring the whole spaceship down?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, but like, I mean, as a player, I just don't really care about any of that anyway. I'm like, man, you don't waste your time explaining it. Just give me the faction. It's been 8 years, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah, but that's an interesting thing, isn't it? The quantum gateways. It's kind of, how do you make a story where you're fighting on a different planet all the time, but you're not allowed to take any of your cool stuff with you? You can only
Right.
bring your ACU. I'm not sure if that's fully explained anywhere, but I assume, you know, that's the most useful thing you can actually send, and you can't send like 100 tanks through due to power limitations or something.
Yeah, and it also has a, militarily it has a smaller footprint. So like you could drop an ACU in and they could start doing stuff and build
Mm.
up their force versus all of a sudden 1,000 ships show up in the sky. You're gonna go, oh, we're being invaded. So
Yeah, but why
there's
can't
that
you
part of
send
it.
in two ACUs or
Yeah, exactly.
that type of thing? I think Terminator has the same problem where they keep sending these Terminators back in time, but why not with a gun?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard. That's a tricky one in sci-fi, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So
All right. Well, Bill, thank you very much for your time. It's been great
yeah,
chatting
thanks.
to you. If
Yeah,
you
thanks, Mike.
if you ever want to chat again, maybe we can do another one time. I'll get, if anybody has a question for Bill, put it in the comments below, and maybe one day we'll talk again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Thanks heaps. See you
Great.
later.
Thank you. Bye.